Hi, I'm Dr. Ginevra, and welcome to day 13 of my video series, 30 Days in My Fibro Life. Today I'm going to be talking about a therapeutic technique that I've been utilizing over the past few months, which has been transformative for me and really helped to heal some emotional wounds related to trauma. So because it's been so amazing for me, I really wanted to share my experience with you, and I will talk about some kind of pretty deeply personal things about kind of my own inner experience. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the science, of course, because I want you to understand a bit more about how this therapy works and kind of what it's all about. So it's based on the concept that when we experience a trauma, our encoding of that memory is all kind of jumbled up. So basically, the idea is we don't encode traumatic memories correctly. So our brain tends to encode kind of the emotion, the thinking, the experience of it all in like a big jumbled mess. And so as it gets kind of encoded like that, it's like something that's like splattered against the wall, right? There's all sorts of different like connections that your brain makes to other things that may totally not be related, but can still be really impacting your mental health and your daily life experience. And so I'll talk more. I think it'll make more sense when I talk about my own experience about that. But basically, the way it works is, so if you break down kind of what EMDR stands for, so the EM stands for eye movement. And so as part of this therapy, you usually are kind of tracking either a light that's kind of going laterally and you're actually using your eyes to track, or I do it virtually, so I'm tracking a little circle that's moving across, the screen of my laptop. And the sole purpose of that is really to distract our thinking or conscious brain, because we have developed many layers of kind of scar tissue above that traumatic memory. And in large part, we don't want to re-experience or even think about that traumatic experience because it was a trauma, right? It was scary, it was painful, it was horrible. It's not like a pleasant memory, and so our brain kind of puts it, kind of buries it under all these kind of layers of thinking, and so it really won't allow access. Our conscious brain really does not want to allow us access to that emotional memory that's stored kind of more deeply in that kind of jumbled mess of emotion, feeling, thought, image, experience, sensation that is that traumatic memory. So, if you distract your brain with the eye movement, or actually it doesn't even need to be your eyes, you can do like lateral tapping type things, but basically something that distracts your thinking brain to allow access to the feeling subconscious brain. And then the idea is you're working with a therapist who kind of guides you through this, and you've worked together in advance to kind of talk about, developing like an internal kind of safe space, a place of calm that you can retreat to if a memory gets too scary. And the idea is that as you sort of go back into this experience, your brain is distracted, you're in a safe environment, you're going back into the feeling of that experience, that the more often you do that, the more desensitized you become to kind of the negative impact, that the emotional suffering that trauma is generating. And so desensitization makes sense just with kind of going back and revisiting it and allowing it to gradually over time become less and less painful. It's the reprocessing part, the R part, where the magic really happens. And that's the part where once we're able to kind of bring this kind of jumbled mess of memories and feelings and experience of that traumatic event, if we can bring it to the surface, so that then our conscious thinking brain can actually look at it and see, oh, does that connection make any sense? Why am I thinking that? We can kind of look at it in a way that you can't when it's sort of buried under so many layers of scar tissue. So I think that the piece that is really the piece that I don't think I quite understood about this before I tried it is one of the most impactful ways that trauma affects us is that in that moment, that jumbled memory, that trauma, that scary experience, we might encode something, particularly like early life or childhood traumas, we might encode something like a negative thought about ourselves that then becomes a belief. It becomes something that we deeply believe. And so if you can like look at that and say, wait, is that true? Is that a true thing that I believe? Or, in the example of kind of something that maybe you experienced as a child, can you now look at that with your adult brain and reprocess it into an experience that essentially allows your brain to heal that kind of emotional wound? And it's like those layers of scar tissue are all on top of this wound, but the wound is really still there. It's a really gaping, open, weeping, painful wound, and the scar tissue hasn't done anything to heal it. It's just kind of buried it. So can we allow these things to surface so that we can reprocess them and ultimately heal them? Now, is it going to make that trauma go away? Is it going to make it so that's an experience you enjoy thinking about? No. But can it help you so that it is not that traumatic experience from the past is not influencing how you think or feel or act today? And I think the kind of revolutionary part for me was like, oh my gosh, we do encode these negative self-thoughts. And that actually ends up being what kind of can cause so much damage, so much emotional wounding over our lifetime. And so I think the best way that I can kind of share this is to just share my experience. So I had in my early childhood some kind of abandonment trauma issues, and it happened when I was so young that I wasn't really able to make kind of a correct association about what it meant. And so what I realized through these sessions where we would go into this memory is that the negative self-thought that I encoded as part of this experience was that I was not worthy of love. And you can imagine how much encoding that as a 4-year-old is going to affect me for my whole life. And, when you encode something like that kind of dysfunctional thought so early, it lives so deep in our subconscious that we're not aware that it's impacting so many decisions, particularly for me around love. And so as I experienced romantic love and other types of love in my life, I could never really accept that they were true, because underneath all that, I felt unworthy of love. I felt unlovable. And so, fast forward to more recent trauma where, the ending of my marriage, it really kind of triggered that same emotion of, I'm like, Jamie doesn't want to be married to me because I'm unworthy of love. And so that, I think, is why when things finally ended between us, why I went into such just a deep, profound depression, because it was like I was realizing, or on some level it was like affirmation that like, oh, okay, like I'm not worthy of love because this person doesn't want to be married to me anymore. And even as I say that out loud, like my conscious brain can be like, that's ridiculous. That has nothing to do with, how worthy you are of love. But it wasn't until I was doing the EMDR therapy over the past few months where I was able to see that negative self-thought about me and my worth as a human how that has impacted so many aspects of my life. But now, as a 48-year-old woman, I can go back, and this is kind of part of the reprocessing portion of EMDR, is I've gone back to that little 4-year-old girl who's feeling unworthy of love, and give her love, and tell her that it's not true, that what she's thinking, what she emotionally gleaned from that traumatic experience isn't true. The same way I would mother a 4-year-old kid, right? So it's almost like going back and sort of embracing or like using my own internal resources to go back and heal that little girl. And the outcome for me has been, over the past few months, I've been able to see the ending of my marriage as still something really sad and really that I didn't want to happen, but that it doesn't reflect on my worth as a human. And that fundamental shift in my thinking has made a world of difference. And so I'm hoping that by bearing my soul literally here, I might inspire somebody who's struggling with the emotional wounding of trauma to maybe seek out something like EMDR. I really can't recommend it enough, and my only regret is I wish I'd done it earlier. Because who knows, maybe I wouldn't have been reenacting this early abandonment wound over and over again with my romantic partners, and maybe my marriage would have turned out differently, but it is what it is. And so I'm at least hoping that somebody can get some benefit from this. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Stay fierce.